In Bellevue, Washington, a 72-year-old businesswoman was about to face her family's ultimate betrayal. What started as routine morning paperwork took a shocking turn when she discovered her own children plotting to steal her multi-million-dollar accounting firm. Margaret Thompson wasn't your typical elderly widow. For 40 years, she had built her empire through razor-sharp intellect and perfect memory. When her son made unauthorized medical inquiries about her mental health, she had no idea she was walking into a calculated guardianship scheme. Thompson's methodical investigation would lead to a courtroom showdown that exposed the devastating reality of elder abuse in America. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Maggie Thompson's fingers moved with practiced precision across the calculator's keys, the familiar rhythm of numbers providing the same comfort it had for 40 years. The morning light filtered through the tall windows of her home office, casting long shadows across the mahogany desk, where ledgers and financial statements lay in perfect order. At 72, her mind remained as sharp as the day she'd incorporated Thompson & Associates, transforming a modest accounting practice into one of Bellevue's most respected firms. The phone rang, interrupting her concentration on the quarterly tax projections for Meridian Industries. She glanced at the caller ID, Dr. Harrison's office. Odd. Her appointment wasn't until next month. Mrs. Thompson, this is Janet from Dr. Harrison's office. I wanted to confirm our conversation yesterday about your son's concerns regarding your recent memory issues. Maggie's pen froze mid-calculation. I'm sorry. What conversation? A pause. Oh, Perhaps I misunderstood. Dr. James Thompson called yesterday asking about cognitive screening options for you. He mentioned some incidents that had the family worried. The words hit like ice water in her veins. I see. And what did you tell him? Well, nothing specific due to privacy laws, but I did explain our standard procedures for elderly patients experiencing memory difficulties. Should I schedule you for an evaluation? That won't be necessary, Maggie replied, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. And Janet? In the future, any inquiries about my health should be directed to me personally. After hanging up, Maggie sat motionless, staring at the phone. James had been asking about memory issues. What memory issues? Yesterday, she'd balanced 3 complex corporate accounts, caught a $50,000 discrepancy that had escaped 2 junior accountants, and memorized the phone numbers of 6 new clients without writing them down. Her business phone buzzed with a text message. She picked it up, then set it down again, a cold realization washing over her. Someone had been through her desk. The small brass paperweight, Robert's final gift before the cancer took him, had been moved exactly 2 inches to the left. Her husband used to tease her about her obsessive organization, calling her the Queen of Order. Now that precision served a different purpose, Maggie opened her desk drawer and retrieved a small digital recorder, a relic from her early business days when she'd documented important client meetings. Her fingers trembled slightly as she pressed record. Tuesday, October 15th, 10:30 a.m. Janet from Dr. Harrison's office called to confirm a conversation I never had about memory screening. Someone has been in my office. The paperweight was moved. James has been making inquiries about my mental health without my knowledge or consent. She paused, then continued. I need to understand what's happening to my family. The next 3. Hours passed in methodical investigation. Maggie pulled her phone records, cross-referencing numbers with her contacts list. There, James's number appeared 6 times in the past 2 weeks, but she remembered only 2 conversations with him. She checked her landline's call history. More calls she didn't remember receiving, all during times when she'd been at the office. Her computer showed recent access to her financial files at unusual hours. Someone with her passwords had been reviewing her accounts, her investment portfolios, her business valuations. The violation felt like finding strange fingerprints on her most intimate possessions. A memory surfaced. Last week's family dinner. James had seemed unusually attentive to her conversation, asking seemingly innocent questions about her daily routine, her business decisions. "Mom, you mentioned forgetting where you put your keys yesterday. That's happening more often, isn't it?" She hadn't mentioned any such thing, but Lisa had nodded supportively, adding her own fabricated concern. "I've noticed it too, Mom. Maybe we should look into some help around the house." Maggie's breath caught. They'd been building a narrative, creating a fictional version of her mental state. But why? The answer lay in the financial documents scattered across her desk. James's credit report, which she'd pulled 6 months ago when he'd asked for another loan, gambling debts totaling $340,000, a mortgage 3 months behind, credit cards maxed out. He'd been bleeding money faster than his physician's salary could replace it. Her intercom buzzed. "Mrs. Thompson, your daughter Lisa is here to see you." Perfect timing. Maggie slipped the recorder into her cardigan pocket and pressed record. Lisa entered with the cautious smile she'd worn since childhood when she'd done something wrong. "Hi, Mom. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by." "How lovely. Coffee?" "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something important." Lisa settled into the leather chair across from the desk, her real estate agent composure slightly frayed. "James and I have been talking, and we're both a little concerned about you." "Oh." Maggie's voice remained neutral, but her thumb found the recorder in her pocket. "It's nothing serious, probably just normal aging, but we've noticed some inconsistencies lately. Little things. You mentioned forgetting where you parked at the grocery store last week, and James said you seemed confused about which day your doctor's appointment was." None of this had happened. Maggie's parking spot was always the same, 3rd row, directly in line with the store's main entrance. Her doctor's appointments were meticulously recorded in both her physical planner and digital calendar. "I see. And what do you suggest we do about these inconsistencies?" Lisa's relief was palpable, mistaking her mother's calm tone for agreement. "Well, maybe we could arrange for someone to help you with the day-to-day stuff, managing your finances, making sure you don't miss appointments. James knows some excellent professionals who specialize in elder care?" Maggie's voice carried a new edge. "Well, yes. People who understand the challenges of aging and can provide the support you need to maintain your independence." The word independence hung in the air like smoke. Maggie understood now. They weren't trying to help her maintain it. They were systematically planning to strip it away. A car door slammed in the driveway. Through her office window, Maggie watched Kevin's battered Honda pull up behind Lisa's BMW. Her youngest son emerged, camera bag slung over his shoulder, moving with the careful deliberation of someone still rebuilding his life one day at a time. Lisa's face tightened. "I didn't know Kevin was coming." Neither had Maggie, but his timing couldn't have been better. Kevin's relationship with his siblings had been strained since his return from rehab. He'd chosen recovery over the family's expectations, trading his Wall Street success for artistic fulfillment and emotional honesty, qualities that made James and Lisa distinctly uncomfortable. The front door opened and closed. Footsteps approached down the hardwood hallway, Kevin's measured pace different from his siblings' more aggressive strides. "Mom?" Kevin appeared in the doorway, taking in the scene with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. "Lisa, this is unexpected." Kevin. Lisa's greeting carried the forced warmth she used with difficult clients. "We were just discussing Mom's health." Kevin's gaze sharpened. "Her health? What's wrong with Mom's health?" "Nothing's wrong," Maggie said firmly. "Your sister and brother have some concerns about my mental acuity." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Kevin stepped fully into the office, his photographer's instincts cataloging the tension in Lisa's posture, the careful neutrality in their mother's expression. What kind of concerns? Lisa launched into her prepared speech about forgetfulness and confusion, the same fictional incidents she'd presented to their mother. But Kevin's expression grew increasingly skeptical. "Mom," he said quietly, "when we talked last week, you walked me through the entire Meridian Industries restructuring from memory. Every tax code, every depreciation schedule, every regulatory requirement. You corrected 3 errors in their preliminary filing that would have cost them tens of thousands in penalties." The silence stretched like a taut wire. Lisa's composure began to crack. "Kevin, I know you want to believe Mom is fine, but denial isn't helpful. We need to be realistic about what? About the fact that she's sharper than both of us. Combined?" Kevin's voice carried the quiet authority of someone who'd learned to speak truth regardless of its comfort level. "Or are we being realistic about James's gambling debts and your commission problems?" Lisa's face flushed. "That's not what this is about, isn't it?" Kevin pulled out his phone and scrolled through his messages. "Because James texted me yesterday asking if I thought Mom was getting confused about money. Seemed pretty specific for someone just concerned about her general health." Maggie watched the exchange with growing clarity. The battle lines were being drawn, and her family was fracturing along predictable fault lines, those who needed her money and those who simply needed her. Her desk phone rang, cutting through the tension. She checked the caller ID and saw James's number. "Hello, James. Mom, I'm glad you're there. Listen, I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday." "What conversation yesterday?" A pause. "About your appointment with Dr. Harrison. You seemed confused about the timing." Maggie met Kevin's eyes across the desk. "James, I haven't spoken with you since Sunday dinner, and I don't have an appointment with Dr. Harrison until next month." Another pause, longer this time. "Mom, we did talk yesterday. I'm worried that you're not remembering our conversations." Kevin reached for the phone. "James, it's Kevin. I've been here for 20 minutes and Mom's mental faculties are working just fine. In fact, she just caught you in a lie." The line went quiet. Then James's voice returned, harder now, stripped of its false concern. "Kevin, this is a family matter. Your history with substance abuse hardly makes you a reliable judge of anyone's mental clarity." The accusation hung in the air like poison. Kevin's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. "My sobriety gives me perfect clarity about manipulation and deceit, James, and I'm seeing plenty of both right now." Lisa stood abruptly. "This is exactly why family meetings never work with you, Kevin. You always make everything about your recovery." "No," Kevin replied quietly. "I make everything about honesty. There's a difference." Maggie pressed the stop button on her recorder. She had enough evidence for now. Her children's true motivations were crystallizing with painful clarity. James's financial desperation, Lisa's eager complicity, and Kevin's isolation from their schemes. "I think," Maggie said, her voice cutting through the argument, "that this conversation has been quite illuminating. Lisa, please give James my regards and tell him that any future concerns about my health should be discussed with me directly. Kevin, would you stay for lunch?" Lisa gathered her purse with sharp, angry movements. "Mom, I hope you'll reconsider. Getting some professional evaluation. For all our sakes." "I'll consider many things," Maggie replied. Professional evaluation being just one of them. After Lisa left, Kevin settled into the chair she'd vacated. The silence between mother and son held none of the tension that had filled the room moments before. "How bad is it?" Kevin asked. Maggie pulled the recorder from her pocket and set it on the desk between them. "Worse than I initially thought. Better than they realize." Kevin studied his mother's face, the sharp intelligence in her eyes, the determined set of her jaw. "What do you need me to do?" For the first time that day, Maggie smiled. Help me remember everything they're trying to make me forget. Outside, clouds gathered over Puget Sound, promising the kind of storm that would test every foundation, every shelter, every bond that claimed to be unbreakable. In her pristine office, surrounded by 40 years of meticulous records, and armed with a son who valued truth over convenience, Maggie Thompson began preparing for the battle of her life. The war for her memory had begun, but she intended to be the one who wrote its history. The storm clouds that had gathered over Puget Sound the day before unleashed their fury by Thursday evening, rain lashing against the windows of Maggie's dining room as she set the table for what James had insisted on calling a family meeting. The irony wasn't lost on her. This was the same mahogany table where she'd helped her children with homework, celebrated birthdays, and shared countless meals during happier times. Now it would serve as a battlefield. Kevin arrived first, shaking, rainwater from his jacket. His camera bag remained in the car. Tonight wasn't about capturing memories, but about preserving the ones under attack. He moved through the familiar rooms with the careful assessment of someone who'd learned to read danger signs, noting the subtle changes his mother had made since their conversation 2 days ago. The small recording device discreetly placed near her usual seat. The legal pad positioned just so. Margaret Thompson was preparing for war. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "How are you holding up?" Kevin asked, finding his mother in the kitchen arranging coffee service with the same precision she brought to everything else. "Better than they expect," Maggie replied, her voice steady. "Worse than I'd hoped necessary." The doorbell chimed precisely at 7 o'clock. James never arrived late. Punctuality was one of his few remaining virtues. Lisa followed moments behind, her Mercedes pulling into the driveway with the aggressive confidence of someone who believed righteousness was on her side. They entered. Together, James leading with his physician's confident stride, Lisa trailing with the nervous energy she'd carried since childhood when facing family confrontations. Both wore expressions of concerned determination, the kind of look people practiced in mirrors before difficult conversations. "Mom, you look tired," James began, his voice carrying the professional concern he used with elderly patients. "Have you been sleeping well?" Maggie settled into her chair, noting how James positioned himself at the head of the table, Robert's old seat, while Lisa chose the spot that gave her the best view of exits. Old habits revealing current intentions. "I sleep perfectly well, James, though I have been having some interesting dreams lately about family loyalty." Kevin took his place across from his siblings, creating a physical divide that mirrored the emotional chasm growing between them. The rain continued its assault against the windows, providing an ominous soundtrack to the unfolding drama. James cleared his throat with the authority of someone accustomed to delivering difficult diagnoses. "Mom, we need to talk about some concerning changes we've all noticed." "All?" Maggie's eyebrow arched. "Kevin, have you noticed concerning changes?" "Only in James's gambling debt and Lisa's sudden interest in your financial affairs." Kevin I replied evenly. Lisa's face flushed. "This isn't about money, Kevin. This is about Mom's well-being." "Really?" Kevin pulled out his phone and scrolled to a text message. "Because yesterday James texted me asking if I thought you were ready to discuss financial planning. Interesting timing, considering he owes $340,000 to various creditors." The silence that followed was broken only by the rhythmic drumming of rain. James's carefully constructed facade began showing cracks. "My personal finances have nothing to do with this intervention," James said, his voice tightening. "This is about Mom's declining cognitive function." Maggie leaned forward slightly, her businessman's instincts recognizing the moment when negotiations revealed their true stakes. "James, describe for me these specific instances of declining cognitive function." "Well, last week you forgot where you parked at the grocery store." I park in the same spot every time. Third row, aligned with the main entrance. Space number 47. You missed your doctor's appointment. I haven't had a doctor's appointment in 6 weeks. My next one is November 12th at 2:15 p.m. with Dr. Harrison for my annual physical. James's confidence wavered, but Lisa jumped in with practiced support. Mom, sometimes people with early dementia don't remember being confused. The gaps in memory can be selective. Maggie's laugh carried no humor. Selective memory. How fascinating. She reached into her cardigan and withdrew a manila folder, placing it on the table with deliberate precision. Let's discuss selective memory. She opened the folder, revealing bank statements, credit reports, and legal documents. James, would you like to explain to Lisa why you called Dr. Harrison's office 6 times in the past month asking about cognitive screening procedures? James's face paled. I was gathering information for your benefit. Or perhaps you'd like to explain why you accessed my computer files last Tuesday at 11 p.m. using the password I gave you for emergency purposes only. Mom, I was just checking my business accounts, reviewing my investment portfolios, downloading copies of my will. Maggie's voice remained calm, but her words cut like surgical instruments. Or maybe Lisa would like to explain why she's been researching the market value of this house and calling real estate attorneys about power of attorney procedures? Lisa's composure crumbled. How did you— We were just trying to be prepared. In case what? In case I developed the dementia you've been fabricating evidence for? Kevin watched his siblings with the clear-eyed assessment of someone who'd spent years recognizing manipulation. Tell her about the recording, Mom. Maggie reached for the small device near her plate. Tuesday morning, Lisa visited my office. She made several specific claims about my alleged memory problems. She pressed play. Lisa's voice filled the room, artificially concerned and persuasive. You mentioned forgetting where you parked at the grocery store last week, and James said you seemed confused about which day your doctor's appointment was. The recording continued, capturing Lisa's suggestions about professional help and financial management services. When it ended, the silence felt heavier than the storm outside. None of those incidents happened, Maggie said quietly. You fabricated every single example of my supposed confusion. James stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Mom, this is exactly the kind of paranoid thinking we're worried about. Recording family conversations, making accusations. The accusations are documented facts. Maggie's voice carried the authority of 4 decades building a business on truth and precision. Your gambling debts are real. Your unauthorized medical inquiries are real. Your midnight computer access is real. The only fiction in this room is your concern for my mental health. You don't understand the pressure I'm under, James said, his careful facade finally collapsing. The hospital is reviewing my performance. Sandra's threatening divorce. The kids need college money. You have millions sitting in accounts while my life falls apart. The truth hung in the air like smoke. Kevin felt a familiar recognition. The moment when addictive thinking revealed itself completely, stripping away justifications to expose the raw need underneath. So you decided to take it, Kevin said, not a question but a statement. Lisa's voice was barely a whisper. We thought, if you needed care anyway, it made sense to keep everything in the family. By declaring me incompetent based on lies? We were going to take good care of you, James said desperately. The best facilities, professional supervision, while you liquidated my business and spent my assets on your gambling addiction. The accusation hit like a physical blow. James's face contorted with rage and desperation. You've always controlled everyone with money. Even Dad couldn't make a decision without your approval. Maybe it's time someone else had control. Control? Maggie's laugh was sharp as winter wind. You want to steal 40 years of my work because you can't control your own impulses. She stood slowly, her 72 years carrying the weight of profound disappointment. I built Thompson and Associates from nothing. I raised 3 children as a single mother while earning my CPA. I survived your father's alcoholism, Robert's cancer, and 40 years of people underestimating me because of my age and gender. And now my own children think they can strip away everything I've earned based on fabricated evidence and manipulative lies. Kevin rose as well, moving to stand behind his mother's chair. James, you need to stop this. Get help for the gambling. Fix your marriage, but leave Mom alone. Easy words from someone whose addiction we all enabled for years, James shot back. Where was your concern when we were cleaning up your messes? I never tried to steal from our mother to fund my problems. Lisa looked between her brothers, tears streaming down her face. I never wanted it to go this far. I'm drowning in debt, the real estate market is brutal, and James said it would be temporary. Nothing about a guardianship proceeding is temporary, Maggie said. Once you're declared incompetent, getting that ruling reversed is nearly impossible. James gathered his coat, his face hard with fury and defeat. You think you've won something here, but you're a 72-year-old woman living alone in a big house. What happens when you really do start forgetting things? When you really do need help? Don't expect any from me. I wouldn't, Maggie replied calmly. But I will expect you to honor the restraining order I'm filing tomorrow. James paused at the door. Restraining order? Against any further unauthorized medical inquiries, computer access, or harassment. And James? Her voice carried the steel that had built a business empire. If you proceed with any legal action based on fraudulent claims about my mental health, I will not only defend myself, I will ensure the medical board learns about your unethical conduct. After James stormed out and Lisa fled in tears, Kevin helped his mother clear the coffee service neither of them had touched. What's next? He asked. Maggie looked out at the storm, watching lightning illuminate the sound in brilliant flashes. Tomorrow, I call Sarah Martinez. If they want a legal battle over my competency, they'll get one. But it won't end the way they expect. The thunder that followed seemed to agree, rolling across the water like applause for the war that was about to begin. The morning after the storm brought deceptive calm to Bellevue, but Sarah Martinez recognized the tension in her potential client's voice from their first phone conversation. 30 years of practicing law had taught her to distinguish between genuine family concern and calculated manipulation, and Margaret Thompson's situation bore all the hallmarks of the latter. Sarah's downtown Seattle office overlooked Elliott Bay, where ferries moved like chess pieces across gray water. She'd chosen this view deliberately. It reminded her that even the largest vessels needed careful navigation to reach safe harbor. Elder law required similar precision, especially when families turned predatory. Maggie arrived precisely at 9, carrying a leather briefcase that looked older than some of Sarah's junior associates. She moved with the measured confidence of someone accustomed to boardrooms and difficult negotiations, though Sarah detected the underlying strain of betrayal in her carefully controlled posture. Mrs. Thompson, thank you for coming in. Sarah gestured toward the conference table where she conducted her most sensitive cases. Kevin gave me a brief overview, but I'd like to hear the situation in your own words. For the next hour, Maggie methodically presented her evidence with the precision of someone who'd built a career on documentation. The unauthorized medical inquiries, computer access logs, fabricated incidents, recorded conversations, each piece carefully organized and cross-referenced. Sarah took notes, her expression growing increasingly grave. This isn't just a family dispute, Mrs. Thompson. This is a coordinated campaign to defraud you of your autonomy and assets. Can they succeed? Maggie's voice remained steady, but Sarah caught the vulnerability underneath. Washington's guardianship laws are designed to protect vulnerable adults, but they can be weaponized by unscrupulous family members. The burden of proof is surprisingly low. Credible testimony about cognitive decline can be enough to trigger court-ordered evaluations. Sarah pulled up James Thompson's professional profile on her computer. Your son's medical credentials will carry weight with a judge. He can present himself as the concerned physician's son who reluctantly concluded his mother needs protection. From her own competence. Exactly. But here's what they don't know. You've documented everything. Most elderly victims of guardianship abuse are caught off guard, unprepared, with no evidence to counter their family's claims. You're different. The office phone buzzed. Sarah's assistant's voice carried unusual urgency. Ms. Martinez? King County Family Court just filed an emergency guardianship petition for Margaret Thompson. The hearing is scheduled for Monday. Sarah's jaw tightened. They moved faster than expected. Emergency petitions are supposed to be for immediate safety concerns. Maggie set down her coffee cup with deliberate calm. What kind of immediate safety concerns? Sarah scanned the petition on her computer screen, her expression darkening. According to this, you've been displaying severe cognitive decline, paranoid ideation, and inability to manage financial affairs. They claim you've been making erratic business decisions and exhibiting aggressive behavior toward family members. All fabricated. I know that, but Judge Patricia Hendricks doesn't. She'll see an emergency petition filed by a respected emergency room physician supported by testimony from his sister. Without context, it appears legitimate. Sarah stood and moved to her window, watching the fairies navigate the sound. We have 4 days to build your defense. First priority is getting you evaluated by Dr. Patricia Williams. She's the most respected neuropsychologist in the state for competency assessments. Will she be objective? Dr. Williams doesn't care about family politics or medical hierarchies. She cares about truth. If your cognitive function is intact, she'll document it thoroughly. Sarah's phone rang again. This time, her expression shifted to barely controlled anger as she listened. That was Dr. Williams' office, Sarah said after hanging up. Someone called this morning claiming to represent you, requesting that any evaluation results be shared with your medical care team, specifically Dr. James Thompson. He's trying to influence the evaluation before it happens. Or access the results to prepare counter-arguments. Either way, it's inappropriate contact that we'll document. Sarah returned to her desk and began typing rapidly. I'm filing our response to their petition, along with a motion to dismiss based on fraudulent claims. We'll also request a different judge. Hendricks tends to err on the side of protection even when it's not warranted. What are our chances? Sarah paused her typing, considering carefully. In most guardianship cases, poor. The system assumes family members act in good faith. But your documentation changes everything. We're not just defending against incompetency claims. We're exposing systematic fraud. A knock interrupted them. Kevin entered, carrying printouts and wearing the focused expression of someone who'd spent the night researching legal procedures. I've been digging into James's finances, he said without preamble. The gambling debt is worse than we thought. He owes money to some very unpleasant people who don't typically extend payment plans. Sarah examined the documents Kevin provided. This gives us motive. Desperate debt creates desperate actions. There's more. Lisa refinanced her house 3 times in 2 years. She's weeks away from foreclosure. And James's wife Sandra filed for legal separation yesterday. She's protecting her assets before his creditors come calling. They're both financially drowning, Maggie observed quietly. And your estate is their only life preserver, Sarah agreed. Kevin, this information strengthens our case considerably. Financial desperation often drives guardianship abuse. Sarah's assistant knocked and entered. Ms. Martinez? Thompson and Associates called. They're concerned about Mrs. Thompson's absence from important client meetings. Apparently, someone called claiming she was having medical issues and wouldn't be available for business decisions. Maggie's face hardened. They're already trying to undermine my business relationships. Standard tactics, Sarah confirmed grimly. Create the appearance of incompetence to support their legal claims. We need to move quickly. Sarah outlined their strategy. Immediate cognitive evaluation with Dr. Williams. Documentation of all business activities to demonstrate competence. And depositions from colleagues who could testify to Maggie's mental acuity. Mrs. Thompson, I need to prepare you for what's coming. Your children will paint you as a confused, paranoid elderly woman who's lost touch with reality. They'll claim your accusations against them prove your mental decline. And if the judge believes them, then you'll lose control of everything you've built. Your business, your assets, your basic autonomy, all transferred to a court-appointed guardian who may or may not be your son. The weight of those words settled over the room like smoke. Maggie stared out at the gray waters of Elliott Bay, watching ferries navigate between islands with practiced precision. Sarah, I've spent 40 years proving that being underestimated is sometimes an advantage. They think my age makes me vulnerable, that my memory is failing, that I can't fight back effectively. She turned from the window with steel in her voice. They're about to learn how wrong they are. Sarah smiled grimly. Then let's show them what happens when they try to steal from someone who built an empire by never backing down from a fight. Outside, clouds gathered again over Puget Sound. But inside the law office, battle plans were taking shape with the methodical precision that had made Margaret Thompson's business empire legendary. Dr. Patricia Williams had conducted over 3,000 cognitive evaluations in her 20-year career, but she approached each one with the same methodical thoroughness that had earned her reputation as Washington's most trusted neuropsychologist. Her office in the University of Washington Medical Center deliberately avoided the clinical sterility that made elderly patients nervous. Warm lighting, comfortable seating, and family photos created an environment where truth could emerge naturally. Margaret Thompson arrived 15 minutes early, as Dr. Williams had expected from reading her case file. Punctuality often indicated preserved executive function, though she'd learned never to draw conclusions from a single data point. Too many families had coached elderly relatives on proper behavior before evaluations. Mrs. Thompson, thank you for coming in. I'm Dr. Williams. She observed Maggie's firm handshake, steady eye contact, and the way she navigated the office furniture without hesitation. I understand this evaluation wasn't your idea. My son believes I have dementia. I believe he has gambling debts. Maggie's directness brought a slight smile to Dr. Williams's face. I suppose we're here to determine which diagnosis is more accurate. Dr. Williams had reviewed the guardianship petition with growing skepticism. Emergency filings typically involved patients found wandering confused or making dangerous decisions. Margaret Thompson's alleged symptoms read more like a checklist than organic cognitive decline. Let's start with some background information. Tell me about your typical day. For the next hour, Maggie walked through her routine with precision. That would have impressed a Swiss clockmaker. She described her morning review of client portfolios, afternoon meetings with business partners, and evening review of market analyses. Every detail was specific, chronologically ordered, and verifiable. You mentioned reviewing the Meridian Industries account yesterday. What were the specific tax implications of their merger proposal? Without hesitation, Maggie launched into a complex analysis involving corporate tax codes, depreciation schedules, and regulatory compliance requirements. Dr. Williams took careful notes, recognizing expertise that couldn't be faked or coached. Now, Mrs. Thompson, your son claims you've been experiencing memory lapses. Can you describe any incidents where you've been confused or forgetful? The incidents James described never happened. I can provide documentation proving each claim is fabricated. Maggie's voice remained steady, but Dr. Williams detected underlying hurt. What I can't document is why my own children would lie about my mental state. Dr. Williams began the formal cognitive testing battery. The Montreal Cognitive Assessment, Wechsler Memory Scale, and executive function tests typically revealed clear patterns of decline in dementia patients. Margaret Thompson's results told a different story entirely. Her immediate recall was perfect. She repeated 7-digit number sequences forward and backward without error. Her delayed recall surpassed many people half her age. When asked to remember a list of 15 unrelated words after a 20-minute interval, she recited all 15 in perfect order. "That's unusual," Dr. Williams murmured, double-checking her scoring. "Most people your age would struggle with more than 5 or 6 words. I've always had excellent memory. It's served me well in business. Clients appreciate when I remember their children's names and their company's history without consulting files." The executive function tests proved equally impressive. Maggie navigated complex problem-solving scenarios, demonstrated abstract reasoning that would challenge college students, and showed cognitive flexibility that many younger adults lacked. Dr. Williams administered the clock drawing test, a simple assessment that often revealed early cognitive decline. Margaret's clock was geometrically precise, with numbers properly spaced and hands indicating the requested time exactly. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm going to ask you some questions about your family situation. Your son James filed this petition claiming concern for your welfare. How do you explain the discrepancy between his perception and your actual cognitive function?" Maggie's expression hardened slightly. "James owes $340,000 to gambling creditors. My daughter Lisa faces foreclosure. They see my assets as their solution. That's a serious accusation. I have documentation of every claim." Maggie reached into her purse and withdrew a manila folder. "Bank records, credit reports, recorded conversations where they discuss plans to gain control of my finances." Dr. Williams examined the evidence with growing concern. Financial exploitation of elderly adults often began with accusations of incompetence, but she'd rarely seen such systematic documentation of the manipulation. A knock interrupted them. Dr. Williams's assistant entered, looking flustered. "Doctor, there's a Dr. James Thompson here. He says he's here to discuss his mother's evaluation." Dr. Williams' expression sharpened. "Did you schedule this meeting, Mrs. Thompson?" "Absolutely not." "Send Dr. Thompson away," Dr. Williams instructed her assistant, "and document his attempt to interfere with a confidential evaluation." After the assistant left, Dr. Williams studied her patient carefully. "Mrs. Thompson, your son's behavior is highly inappropriate. Medical professionals don't typically try to influence evaluations of family members, unless they're desperate for specific results." Dr. Williams spent another hour testing Maggie's cognitive function from every angle. Memory, attention, language, visuospatial skills, executive function. Every domain showed not just normal function, but exceptional performance for any age group. "Mrs. Thompson, I need to ask directly. Have you experienced any confusion, memory, loss, or difficulty managing your affairs?" "None whatsoever. My memory is as sharp as it was 20 years ago, possibly sharper, since I no longer waste mental energy on unimportant details. The incidents described in your son's petition, forgetting where you parked, missing appointments, confusion about finances, do any ring true? Every single example is fabricated. I can provide security footage of my parking habits, appointment, calendars showing perfect attendance, and business records demonstrating complex financial decision-making." Dr. Williams reviewed her extensive notes. In 3 decades of practice, she'd learned to distinguish between genuine cognitive decline and family manipulation. Margaret Thompson's case was among the clearest examples of the latter she'd ever encountered. "Mrs. Thompson, based on this evaluation, you show no signs of cognitive impairment. Your memory, reasoning, and judgment are not only intact, but exceptional. The behaviors described in the guardianship petition are inconsistent with your demonstrated abilities." "So, you'll testify that I'm competent?" "I'll testify that you demonstrate cognitive function in the superior range for any age group. The claims against your mental capacity appear to be without medical foundation." As Maggie prepared to leave, Dr. Williams felt compelled to add a warning. Mrs. Thompson, be careful. Families pursuing fraudulent guardianship often escalate their tactics when medical evidence contradicts their claims. Doctor, I've built a business by anticipating my opponent's moves and staying 3 steps ahead. James thinks my age makes me vulnerable. Maggie's smile held no warmth. He's about to learn that experience is the most dangerous weapon of all. Walking to the elevator, Maggie reflected on the morning's victory. Dr. Williams' evaluation would provide crucial evidence, but she knew James wouldn't accept defeat easily. Desperate people made dangerous decisions, and her son's desperation was approaching critical mass. The real battle was just beginning. The news of Dr. Williams's evaluation results hit the Thompson family like a seismic shock, with each member responding according to their own moral compass. Lisa received the call from James at 6:30 Friday morning, his voice tight with barely controlled rage as he described the neuropsychologist's obvious bias and flawed testing methodology. But Lisa wasn't listening to her brother's rationalizations. She was watching her mother through the window of Thompson and Associates, where Maggie sat at her desk managing the quarterly crisis at Bellingham Manufacturing with the precision of a symphony conductor. 3 accountants, 2 lawyers, and the company's CEO surrounded her desk as she navigated a complex tax restructuring that would save the client millions in penalties. She found a loophole in Section 1202 that none of us caught, whispered Janet, one of the junior accountants, as Lisa lingered in the reception area. Your mother just saved Bellingham from bankruptcy. Lisa watched her mother field rapid-fire questions about depreciation schedules, regulatory compliance, and international tax implications, answering each with immediate authority. This wasn't a woman losing her mental faculties. This was a master craftsman at the peak of her abilities. The guilt that had been gnawing at Lisa's conscience since the failed intervention crystallized into something harder to ignore. She'd agreed to support James's guardianship petition based on fabricated evidence, motivated by her own financial desperation rather than genuine concern for her mother's welfare. Watching Maggie now, she couldn't maintain the comfortable lie that they were acting in anyone's best interest except their own. Her phone buzzed with a text from Michael, her ex-husband. Kids are asking when they can visit Grandma again. What? Should I tell them? The question hit like a physical blow. Emma and Jake, her 8-year-old twins, adored their grandmother. They didn't know their mother was trying to strip away Maggie's autonomy based on lies. How could she explain that Grandma might not be available for visits because Mommy helped Uncle James convince a court she was crazy? Michael Morrison had been expecting Lisa's call, though not at 7 in the morning. His construction crew wouldn't start for another hour, but he'd been awake since 5, thinking about the woman who'd supported him through his divorce from Lisa with quiet dignity and practical help. Michael, I need to ask you something. Lisa's voice carried a tremor he recognized from their marriage, the sound of someone realizing they'd made a terrible mistake. About your mother? You lived with us for 3 years. You saw how she managed everything, the business, the family, all of it. Did you ever see signs of confusion? Memory problems? Michael's laugh held no humor. Lisa, your mother has the sharpest mind of anyone I've ever met. She remembered my birthday. When my own family forgot it, she helped me understand contract negotiations that my own lawyer couldn't explain clearly. But James says a lot of things. Most of them serve James. Michael's voice hardened. What's this really about? The silence stretched, long enough for Michael to understand the implications. Jesus, Lisa. Tell me you're not going along with some scheme to have her declared incompetent. Michael, that woman took care of you when you were struggling. She helped with the kids when I couldn't be there. She never asked for anything. In return, except honesty. His voice carried the disappointment of someone who'd hoped for better. And this is how you repay her? Lisa ended the call without responding, but Michael's words echoed in her memory as she drove home to her house. the house that Maggie had helped her buy, co-signing the loan when Lisa's credit wasn't sufficient. Every room contained reminders of her mother's generosity. The furniture Maggie had purchased when Lisa couldn't afford to replace her college-era belongings, the swing set in the backyard that Maggie had installed for the twins, the photographs documenting family celebrations, where Maggie always stood slightly apart, the provider rather than the provided for. That evening, Kevin arrived at Lisa's house unannounced, finding her in the kitchen staring at foreclosure notices spread across the table like tarot cards predicting doom. "Michael called me," Kevin said without preamble. "He's agreed to testify. On Mom's behalf." Lisa looked up with red-rimmed eyes. "Kevin, I'm losing everything. The house, my business, maybe the kids if I can't provide stability. So you decided to destroy Mom's life to save your own?" "It wasn't supposed to be destruction. James said we'd take care of her, make sure she had everything she needed. In a facility, under someone else's control. While you liquidated her business and spent her assets." Lisa flinched at the stark description. "I never wanted it to go this far. I thought maybe she really was getting confused, and we were just protecting her." Kevin sat across from his sister, studying the woman who'd once been his closest ally in the family. Addiction had taught him to recognize self-deception in all its forms, and Lisa's rationalizations carried the familiar scent of justification, masking moral compromise. "Lisa, Mom recorded our conversation at her house. She has documentation of every lie James told, every fabricated incident you supported. Dr. Williams's evaluation proves she's cognitively superior to most people our age." "I know." Lisa's voice was barely a whisper. "And you're still going to testify against her?" Lisa looked at the foreclosure notices, then at the photographs of her children on the refrigerator. "Kevin, I don't know how to choose between destroying my mother and destroying my family. You choose by doing what's right, regardless of the cost. That's what recovery taught me. That the short-term pain of honesty is always better than the long-term damage of living a lie." Kevin reached into his jacket and withdrew a manila envelope. "Mom wanted me to give you this." Inside was a cashier's check made out to Lisa's mortgage company for the full amount of her debt, along with a handwritten note. "For Emma and Jake's sake, not yours. This doesn't change what you've chosen to do, but my grandchildren shouldn't suffer for their mother's decisions." Lisa stared at the check through tears that blurred the numbers. "She's still trying to save me. Even while you're trying to destroy her, the question is whether you're going to let her." As Kevin left, Lisa sat alone with her mother's generosity weighing heavier than her own guilt. Outside, rain began falling again, washing the windows but unable to cleanse the stain of betrayal that seemed to permeate everything. In 3 days, she would have to choose between truth and convenience, between family loyalty and financial survival. Her mother had already chosen, extending grace even to those who'd shown her none. The foundation of the conspiracy was cracking, but whether it would collapse entirely remained to be seen. Emma Thompson had always been her grandmother's favorite, though Maggie would never admit to playing favorites among her grandchildren. At 16, Emma possessed the kind of observational intelligence that made adults underestimate her while she cataloged their secrets. She'd inherited her grandmother's analytical mind and her grandfather's stubborn moral streak, a combination that made her dangerous to those with something to hide. The conversation she'd overheard Saturday night would haunt her for the rest of her life. Emma had returned home from her friend Sarah's house earlier than expected, using her key to enter through the kitchen door while her parents argued in the living room. Their voices carried the desperate edge of people whose carefully constructed plans were falling apart. "The evaluation was supposed to support our case, not destroy it." Her mother Sandra's voice was sharp with accusation. "You said this Williams woman would find what we needed." "Patricia Williams doesn't take instructions," James replied, his tone carrying the exhaustion of someone fighting a losing battle. "She's annoyingly ethical, but we can challenge her findings, claim she was influenced by what? By your mother's actual competence? Sandra's sarcasm cut deep. James, we're about to lose everything. The house, my practice, the kids' college funds. Your gambling debts aren't going away because some doctor says your mother is mentally sharp. Emma pressed herself against the kitchen wall, her heart pounding as she realized the implications of what she was hearing. Her parents weren't concerned about Grandma's health. They were trying to steal from her. We pivot, James said with the confidence of someone accustomed to high-stakes decisions. If we can't prove incompetence, we prove she's a danger to herself and others. Paranoid behavior, aggressive confrontations with family, potentially violent reactions to perceived threats. You want to claim she's dangerous? I want to claim she's becoming increasingly unstable. Lisa's testimony about threatening behavior. Kevin's history of addiction affecting his judgment about safety. Instances of her acting irrationally toward people trying to help her. Emma's blood ran cold as she listened to her father construct a new web of lies with clinical precision. This wasn't desperation anymore. This was calculated cruelty. The recording equipment in her house proves paranoid thinking, James continued. What rational person records family conversations unless they're experiencing delusional persecution? James, what if someone finds out we're lying? About what? About being concerned for an elderly woman's welfare? About wanting to protect her from making dangerous decisions? We're her children, Sandra. The court will believe we know her better than anyone. Emma had heard enough. She crept back outside and sat in her car for an hour, trying to process the magnitude of her parents' betrayal. Her grandmother, the woman who taught her to balance a checkbook, helped her with calculus homework, and listened to her dreams about becoming an engineer, was being systematically destroyed by her own family. The decision came easily. Emma had been raised by two parents who valued success over integrity, but her grandmother had taught her different lessons. Maggie Thompson had shown her that real strength came from standing up for truth, regardless of the personal cost. Monday. Morning, Emma called in sick to school and drove to her grandmother's office. She found Maggie in her usual element, reviewing contracts with the focused intensity that had built an empire from nothing. Emma, sweetheart, shouldn't you be in physics? Grandma, I need to tell you something. About Dad and what he's planning. For the next hour, Emma detailed everything she'd overheard, watching her grandmother's expression shift from surprise to hurt to steely determination. Maggie took careful notes, asking specific questions with the precision of someone building a legal case. Emma, you understand what this means. If you testify about these conversations, you'll be going against your parents. I understand that my parents are trying to destroy the most important person in my life for money they didn't earn. Emma's voice carried a maturity that made Maggie's heart ache. I also understand that doing the right thing isn't always comfortable. That afternoon, Sarah Martinez sat in her office listening to Emma's testimony with growing amazement. In 30 years of practice, she'd rarely encountered such devastating evidence delivered by someone so young. Emma, you're certain about the specific words your father used? About fabricating evidence of dangerous behavior? I recorded it on my phone. Emma produced the device with teenage matter-of-factness. I figured you'd need proof. Sarah played the recording, hearing James Thompson's voice clearly outlining his strategy to destroy his mother through manufactured evidence of mental instability. The audio quality was perfect, the voices unmistakably identifiable. This changes everything, Sarah murmured. This isn't just guardianship fraud anymore. This is conspiracy to commit elder abuse through perjury. Meanwhile, Maggie sat in her home office, systematically preparing her final pieces of evidence. The audio recordings Emma had provided were devastating, but they were part of a larger pattern she'd been documenting for weeks. Her computer files contained metadata proving unauthorized access. Her phone records showed calls she'd never made, and her security system had captured footage of James entering her home during business hours. Kevin arrived as she was organizing the materials, carrying copies of financial documents that painted a devastating picture of his siblings' desperation. James borrowed against his life insurance policy last week, Kevin reported. Sandra transferred their remaining assets to her sister's name. They're preparing for bankruptcy while trying to access your money. They're planning to claim I'm dangerous now, Maggie said, showing Kevin Emma's statement. Paranoid, potentially violent, a threat to family members trying to help me. Kevin read the document with the careful attention of someone who understood manipulation in all its forms. It's actually brilliant in a sociopathic way. If they can't prove you're incompetent, they'll prove you're unstable. Except they've made a crucial mistake. Which is? Maggie smiled with the cold satisfaction of someone who'd built a career on anticipating opponents' moves. They assume I'm reacting to their moves instead of staying 3 steps ahead. Emma's recording proves premeditation. My documentation shows systematic fraud. Dr. Williams's evaluation demonstrates their medical claims are baseless. She gestured toward the organized files covering her desk. They're not just fighting a guardianship case anymore, Kevin. They're fighting a criminal fraud investigation. You're going to have them prosecuted? I'm going to give them the opportunity to withdraw their petition and seek help for their problems. If they choose to continue this path. Maggie's expression hardened. Then they'll learn that destroying families has consequences beyond money. As evening fell over Bellevue, the final pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. Emma's courage had provided the smoking gun, but it was Maggie's methodical preparation that would determine the battle's outcome. Tomorrow would bring the first day of hearings. The war for her memory was about to become a reckoning for truth itself. Judge Robert Blackwood entered courtroom 304 at precisely 9 o'clock Tuesday morning, his black robes billowing as he surveyed the assembled parties, with the weary authority of someone who'd presided over 3 decades of family dysfunction. The guardianship hearing for Margaret Thompson had drawn an unusually large crowd, journalists drawn by whispers of elder abuse, legal observers curious about the high-profile neuropsychologist's involvement, and family members divided by battle, lines that cut deeper than blood. Maggie sat at the defendant's table beside Sarah Martinez, her posture erect and her gray hair perfectly styled. She wore the navy blue suit she'd worn to important business negotiations, armor disguised as professional attire. Across the aisle, James Thompson consulted with his attorney, Richard Steinberg, while avoiding his mother's steady gaze. Lisa occupied a middle bench, her positioning as uncertain as her loyalties. The cashier's check in her purse seemed to weigh more than the mortgage debt it had erased. This emergency guardianship hearing is now in session, Judge Blackwood announced. Mr. Steinberg, present your case. James's attorney rose with practiced confidence. Your Honor, Dr. James Thompson brings this petition with profound reluctance, seeking protection for his 72-year-old mother, who has exhibited alarming signs of cognitive decline and paranoid behavior. For the next hour, Steinberg painted a devastating portrait of elderly mental deterioration. Margaret Thompson, he claimed, had become increasingly confused about financial matters, suspicious of family members, and unable to distinguish reality from fabricated threats. Her recent installation of recording equipment throughout her home demonstrated dangerous paranoid thinking that endangered both her welfare and her family's safety. Dr. Thompson will testify that his mother's condition has deteriorated rapidly, Steinberg continued. As an emergency room physician, he recognizes the signs of dementia that family members often miss or deny. Judge Blackwood's expression remained neutral, but his pen moved steadily across his legal pad. He'd seen enough guardianship cases to recognize both genuine concern and sophisticated manipulation. Call your first witness. James took the stand, with the confidence of someone accustomed to medical testimony. His credentials were impeccable: Harvard Medical School, 15 years of emergency medicine, published research on geriatric trauma. He spoke with the authority that courtrooms automatically granted to physicians. Dr. Thompson, Describe your mother's recent behavioral changes. Your Honor, I first noticed subtle signs 6 months ago. Repeated questions about conversations that had already occurred, confusion about appointment times, difficulty following complex financial discussions. James's voice carried perfect pitch of professional concern mixed with personal anguish. Did these symptoms worsen over time? Dramatically. She began accusing family members of conspiracies, claiming we were plotting against her. She installed recording equipment to capture conversations she believed were threatening. Last week, she became agitated and hostile when we attempted to discuss her safety. Sarah Martinez took notes, occasionally glancing at Maggie, who sat with remarkable composure considering her son was systematically destroying her reputation with fabricated testimony. Dr. Thompson, in your medical opinion, what condition does your mother suffer from? Early-stage dementia with paranoid features. Her cognitive decline, combined with delusional thinking about family threats, makes her unable to make sound decisions about her welfare or finances. Judge Blackwood leaned forward. Dr. Thompson, have you personally examined your mother in a clinical setting? James hesitated slightly. Your Honor, she refused formal evaluation initially, which is common with dementia patients. However, Dr. Patricia Williams recently conducted a comprehensive assessment. And what were Dr. Williams' findings? Another hesitation. Dr. Williams expressed some concerns about the evaluation environment and suggested further testing might be beneficial. Sarah Martinez stood. Objection, Your Honor. That's a mischaracterization of Dr. Williams's report, which explicitly states that Mrs. Thompson demonstrates superior cognitive function. Sustained. Dr. Thompson, please limit your testimony to facts rather than interpretations. The first crack appeared in James's testimony. Judge Blackwood had read Dr. Williams' evaluation, a devastating contradiction to every claim in the guardianship petition. Dr. Thompson, you claim your mother exhibits paranoid behavior. Can you provide specific examples? She recorded family conversations without permission, accused us of accessing her computer files, and claimed we were fabricating evidence about her mental state. Were you accessing her computer files? I occasionally checked on her, business activities out of concern for her welfare. Without her permission, James's composure began fraying. Your Honor, when someone is experiencing cognitive decline, family members sometimes need to verify that important decisions are being made rationally. Sarah Martinez smiled slightly. James was walking directly into the trap they'd set. Dr. Thompson, you mentioned your mother's financial confusion. Are you currently experiencing any financial difficulties that might benefit from access to her assets? Objection. Steinberg rose quickly. Irrelevant to the petitioner's mental competency. Your Honor, Sarah replied smoothly. Dr. Thompson's financial motivations are directly relevant to the credibility of his medical claims. Judge Blackwood considered. I'll allow limited inquiry into potential conflicts of interest. Dr. Thompson, please answer the question. James's face flushed. My personal finances have no bearing on my professional assessment of my mother's condition. That's not what I asked. Are you currently in debt? Your Honor, everyone has debts. Dr. Thompson, do you currently owe approximately $340,000 to various creditors, including gambling establishments? The courtroom fell silent. James stared at Sarah Martinez with something approaching hatred. I don't see how my financial obligations— Your Honor, Sarah interrupted, will demonstrate that Dr. Thompson's gambling addiction and desperate financial situation provide clear motive for this fraudulent guardianship petition. Judge Blackwood's expression darkened. Dr. Thompson, step down. Mr. Steinberg, call your next witness. As James returned to his seat, the confidence that had carried him into the courtroom had evaporated. The trial was only beginning, but the foundation, of his case was already crumbling. Margaret Thompson approached the witness stand with the same measured confidence she'd brought to 40 years of business negotiations. Every eye in courtroom 304 followed her movement, some with curiosity, others with skepticism, but all recognizing they were about to witness something extraordinary. "Mrs. Thompson," Sarah Martinez began, "Dr. James Thompson claims you suffer from dementia with paranoid features. How do you respond?" Maggie's voice carried across the courtroom with crystalline clarity. "I respond with facts, Ms. Martinez. Facts documented, recorded, and verified." She gestured toward the evidence table where dozens of files awaited presentation. "My son's claims aren't medical observations. They're fabrications designed to steal my life's work. Can you walk us through your daily routine?" For the next 20 minutes, Maggie detailed her business operations with precision that made James visibly uncomfortable. She recited client names, account numbers, and complex tax strategies from memory, occasionally referencing specific dates and dollar amounts that her accountants confirmed with amazed nods. "Mrs. Thompson, your son claims you've become confused about finances. Yesterday, you resolved a crisis at Bellingham Manufacturing. Please describe that situation." Without hesitation, Maggie launched into a complex explanation of Section 1202 tax implications, international regulatory compliance, and restructuring strategies that would save the client $3 million in penalties. Her analysis was so detailed that even the court reporter looked impressed. Judge Blackwood leaned forward. "Mrs. Thompson, these are remarkably complex financial concepts. Are you reading from notes?" "No, Your Honor. I'm simply describing yesterday's work, the same work my son claims I'm too confused to perform." Sarah Martinez approached the evidence table. "Mrs. Thompson, you've been accused of paranoid behavior for recording family conversations. Why did you install recording equipment?" "Because I discovered my children were systematically lying about my mental state while accessing my computer files, making unauthorized medical inquiries, and fabricating incidents that never occurred. The recordings prove their conspiracy." Conspiracy is a strong word. It's an accurate word. Maggie's composure never wavered. "I have documentation of every unauthorized access, every fabricated claim, every lie told in service of gaining control over my assets." Sarah played Emma's recording, James's voice filling the courtroom as he outlined his strategy to manufacture evidence of dangerous behavior. The silence that followed was deafening. "Mrs. Thompson, that's your son discussing plans to fabricate evidence against you?" "Yes. Recorded by my granddaughter, who was horrified to learn her parents were destroying her grandmother for money." Judge Blackwood's expression hardened as he reviewed the transcript. "Mrs. Thompson, in your opinion, why are your children pursuing this guardianship?" "Dr. James Thompson owes $340,000 in gambling debts. Lisa faces foreclosure. They see my estate as their salvation." Maggie's voice carried 40 years of business acumen. "This isn't about my welfare, Your Honor. It's about their desperation." Kevin took the stand next, his testimony carrying the quiet authority of someone who'd learned to speak uncomfortable truths. "Your Honor, my mother supported me through addiction recovery when my siblings wanted to cut ties. Her mind is sharper now than when I was growing up." Michael Morrison followed, his construction worker's honesty cutting through legal complexity. "Margaret Thompson remembered my kids' birthdays when their own mother forgot. She helped me understand financial documents my lawyer couldn't explain. The idea that she's mentally confused is absurd." But the most devastating testimony came from Emma Thompson herself. At 16, she possessed a moral clarity that shamed the adults around her. "Your Honor, my father and mother plan to destroy my grandmother for money she earned through 40 years of hard work. They're not protecting her, they're stealing from her. And they're using the legal system to do it." Judge Blackwood studied the evidence with growing anger. The medical evaluation, recorded conspiracies, financial documentation, and witness testimony painted a clear picture of systematic elder abuse disguised as family concern. As the defense rested, Maggie remained in the witness box, her 72 years carrying the weight of profound betrayal, but also the strength of someone who'd built an empire through intelligence, determination, and unshakable integrity. The woman James Thompson had tried to paint as confused and paranoid had just demonstrated why she'd been successful for 4 decades and why his desperate gamble was about to cost him everything. Judge Robert Blackwood had presided over 847 guardianship cases during his 23 years on the bench, but none had left him as professionally outraged as Thompson versus Thompson. After a 30-minute recess to review the evidence, he returned to courtroom 304 with the controlled fury of someone who'd witnessed a systematic perversion of justice. The courtroom fell silent as he arranged his papers with deliberate precision. Maggie sat with her hands folded, her expression serene despite the magnitude of what hung in the balance. Across the aisle, James stared at the table, his medical career's reputation crumbling with each passing moment. In 30 years of family law, Judge Blackwood began, his voice carrying the weight of legal authority, I have rarely encountered such a blatant abuse of our guardianship system. This petition represents not family concern, but family predation of the most calculating variety. James's attorney started to rise, but Judge Blackwood's sharp glance sent him back to his seat. Dr. James Thompson filed emergency guardianship, papers claiming his mother suffered from dementia with paranoid features. The medical evidence presented tells a dramatically different story. Dr. Patricia Williams's comprehensive evaluation reveals cognitive function in the superior range for any age group, not just elderly adults, but adults of any age. Judge Blackwood held up the evaluation report. Mrs. Thompson's memory testing scored in the 98th percentile. Her executive function surpassed that of college graduates. Her reasoning abilities would challenge professionals half her age. These results aren't marginally normal, they're exceptional. Lisa closed her eyes, the weight of her participation in the conspiracy crushing her remaining defenses. But the medical evidence is only the beginning, Judge Blackwood continued, his voice hardening. The testimony revealed a coordinated campaign to fabricate evidence of mental decline. Dr. Thompson made unauthorized medical inquiries, accessed his mother's computer systems without permission, and created fictional incidents to support his petition. The judge picked up the transcript of Emma's recording. Most damning is the recorded evidence of Dr. Thompson planning to manufacture additional false claims when his initial strategy failed. This recording demonstrates premeditation, conspiracy, and a callous willingness to destroy his mother's reputation for financial gain. Emma squeezed her grandmother's hand, tears streaming down her face as she watched her father's public humiliation unfold. The financial evidence explains the motive with devastating clarity. Dr. Thompson owes $340,000 in gambling debts. His medical practice faces creditor pressure. His marriage has collapsed under financial strain. Mrs. Thompson's multi-million-dollar estate represented his only escape from bankruptcy. Judge Blackwood leaned forward, his voice dropping to a register that commanded absolute attention. This court exists to protect vulnerable elderly citizens from those who would exploit their diminished capacity. But Margaret Thompson's capacity isn't diminished, it's superior. The only diminished capacity in this courtroom belongs to her son's moral judgment. James finally looked up, meeting his mother's eyes for the first time since the hearing began. What he saw there wasn't anger or vindictiveness, but profound disappointment that cut deeper than any legal ruling. The emergency guardianship petition is denied in its entirety, Judge Blackwood declared. Mrs. Margaret Thompson is found to be fully competent to manage her affairs, her finances, and her life decisions. No further guardianship proceedings may be filed without extraordinary, new evidence. But Judge Blackwood wasn't finished. Furthermore, this court is referring this matter to the State Attorney General for investigation of elder abuse, fraud, and perjury. Dr. Thompson's professional conduct will be reported to the Washington State Medical Board for review. The Ike's gavel fell with finality that echoed through the courtroom like thunder. James's face went white as the implications registered. Criminal investigation, medical board review, professional ruin. Lisa broke down completely, sobbing with the force of someone whose carefully constructed life had collapsed around moral choices she couldn't undo. Kevin moved to comfort her, his recovery teaching him that redemption required acknowledging damage before healing could begin. Sarah Martinez embraced her client, but Maggie's eyes remained fixed on her family's wreckage. Victory had come at a price she'd never imagined paying, the complete destruction of family bonds she'd spent a lifetime building. Emma approached the defendant's table, her young face carrying wisdom born from moral courage. "Grandma, I'm sorry. About Dad. But I'm proud I did the right thing." Maggie pulled her granddaughter close, holding the one family member whose love had remained unconditional. "Emma, you saved more than my assets today. You saved my faith that honesty still matters." As the courtroom emptied, Margaret Thompson stood victorious but not triumphant. She'd proven her competence, protected her autonomy, and exposed the conspiracy that had threatened everything she'd built. But victory over her own children felt more like defeat than vindication. 6 months after Judge Blackwood's ruling echoed, through courtroom 304, autumn rain drummed against the windows of Margaret Thompson's home office, the same office where the conspiracy had first been discovered. The legal victory had protected her autonomy, but the personal cost continued reverberating through what remained of her family, like aftershocks from a devastating earthquake. James had vanished into professional exile. The medical board's investigation resulted in a 2-year license suspension, effectively ending his emergency medicine career. Criminal charges for elder abuse and fraud were pending, though his attorney was negotiating a plea agreement. Sandra had filed for divorce, taking their children to her parents in California. Emma's recorded testimony had not only saved her grandmother, but destroyed her nuclear family. The irony wasn't lost on Maggie. She'd preserved her mental competence, while watching her family's emotional stability disintegrate. Lisa knocked tentatively on the office door, carrying the careful posture of someone still learning to live with consequences. The foreclosure notice had been prevented by her mother's intervention, but the shame of her betrayal would take years to overcome. Therapy sessions with Dr. Patricia Williams, the same neuropsychologist who'd evaluated Maggie, were slowly helping Lisa understand how financial desperation had corrupted her moral compass. "Mom, I brought the business transition documents you requested." Maggie looked up from the succession planning materials spread across her desk. At 73, she remained sharp as ever, but the legal battle had crystallized her mortality in ways that decades of business success hadn't. Thompson and Associates needed a future beyond her eventual retirement, and that future couldn't depend on children who'd proven willing to steal rather than earn. "Lisa, sit down. We need to discuss your role in the company's future." Lisa's face tensed with the anxiety of someone who'd forfeited the right to assume family privileges. "Mom, I know I don't deserve consideration after what I did." "Deserve has nothing to do with it. Capability does." Maggie's voice carried the practical authority that had built her empire. "You have excellent instincts for client relations and market analysis. Your moral judgment was compromised by desperation, but that doesn't negate your professional skills." She slid a document across the desk. "I'm offering you a 5-year employment contract with Thompson and Associates. Competitive salary, performance bonuses, and a path to partnership if you demonstrate consistent ethical behavior." Lisa stared at the contract through tears that blurred the carefully typed terms. "Why would you trust me after what I did?" "Because you chose truth over convenience when it mattered most. Your testimony helped expose James's fraud, even though it implicated your own participation." Maggie's expression softened slightly. Redemption isn't about erasing mistakes, Lisa. It's about proving you've learned from them. Kevin entered. As Lisa signed the contract, carrying coffee and the comfortable ease of someone whose relationship with his mother had deepened through crisis. His photography business was thriving, but he'd also begun helping with Thompson & Associates marketing and client communications. "How's Emma adjusting?" Maggie asked, settling into the family dynamic that had emerged from the legal wreckage. "Better than expected. She's been accepted to MIT's engineering program with early admission, full scholarship." Kevin smiled proudly. Her essay about moral courage in family conflicts apparently impressed the admissions committee. "And James?" The question hung heavy between them. Kevin's expression grew somber. "He called yesterday, first time since the trial. He wants to see you." Maggie considered this carefully. The criminal case remained pending, and any contact with James risked complicating legal proceedings. But he was still her son, despite everything he'd done. What did he say? That he's been attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings. That he understands what he destroyed can't be rebuilt, but he wants to try apologizing anyway. Lisa looked up from the contract she'd been signing. "Do you think he means it?" "I think," Maggie said slowly, "that addiction makes people do terrible things, but recovery sometimes makes them capable of genuine change. Kevin's living proof of that possibility." Kevin nodded, understanding the parallel between his own journey and James's potential path. Addiction isn't an excuse for what he did, but it explains how someone could betray family for money. "The question," Maggie continued, "is whether forgiveness serves justice or enables further harm." They sat in contemplative silence as rain continued its steady rhythm against the windows. The legal battle was over, but the emotional healing would take years. Some relationships could be rebuilt stronger for having been broken and mended. Others might remain permanently damaged, serving as expensive lessons about the price of betrayal. "Schedule a meeting with James," Maggie decided, finally. "But Kevin, you'll be present, and everything will be recorded. If he's genuinely seeking redemption, he'll accept those conditions." Emma arrived for her weekly visit, bright with the confidence of someone whose moral courage had been validated by events. She'd testified against her parents to protect her grandmother, and that choice had shaped her into someone who understood that integrity wasn't negotiable. "Grandma, my college advisor wants to know about internship opportunities at Thompson & Associates. Apparently, standing up to family fraud makes for impressive leadership experience." Maggie laughed, the first genuine laughter to fill the office since the conspiracy began. "I suppose we could arrange something, though you'll have to work your way up like everyone else." "I wouldn't want it any other way." Outside, the autumn storm was passing, leaving behind the kind of clarity that follows cleansing rain. Margaret Thompson had defended her memory, protected her autonomy, and preserved her legacy. The cost had been enormous, but the victory was complete. She'd proven that age didn't diminish competence, that family loyalty couldn't justify betrayal, and that sometimes the greatest act of love was refusing to enable destruction. The memory wars were over. Truth had won. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.